Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wisdom Exchange 26, where we're going to be talking about the power of symbolism and how you can use the symbolism in your life, how you can delve into your subconscious. We're going to be talking about really understanding the thoughts that go on in your head, how to understand your subconscious, and then using that power that many people have used in history and philosophy, and really delving into the mystery of world religions and how they use that to invoke a sense of power as well. And so I've managed to lift my microphone and I can hold it like this, like a BBC News presenter. So that's really cool as well. So today's going to be super interesting. I wanted to start first on the stories that we create. So if you haven't watched Illuminating Dialogues, I had a recent discussion with my good friend Davina on things like politics, justice. So if you haven't checked that out, look at Illuminating Dialogues number 4. And we'll have a really good conversation next month in November with Dr. Jeswir Kaur on more coaching and learning and the dimensions of learning. So the stories that we create, right? As humans, we have stories in our head, and the stories in our head, the thoughts and emotions in our head, actually dictate how we go about our life. So we spoke to Sunny, we spoke to Lavanya, we spoke to Davina, and they had different stories, right? Different stories driving their life. They're human beings, they're living on the same earth as us, and they're also from very similar cultures, a South Asian background, and they're born in the UK, similar age groups in the 20s and 30s, but they have different stories driving them, and so their lives play out differently, the same as me. So the purpose of the illuminating dialogues is not for you to let any views dominate your thoughts or let any views or emotions, you know, dominate your thoughts, but rather have these thoughts and dialogues invoke and question your own thoughts and your own ways of thinking. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the symbolism and delve into, that mysterious drawing behind me and how stories in our life can actually change the way we act in the world. So imagine that's Sunny, Davina, and Lavanya, right? And I also shared my story last Wisdom Exchange, and I got a bit emotional sharing about my friend, and that shows that I didn't know I was going to get emotional, but there is internal emotion still there. So when it's talked about, it comes up. So imagine that Sunny, Lav, and Davina, and they all seemingly have different lives and different stories on the surface, driving their brains, right? Driving their thought patterns, their speech patterns, their movement, etc. Um, and and also we could, for example, just as a separate example, look at world religions, like take it from the subcontinent, like Sikhism, Hinduism, Islam, and so from a more Western or especially in the colonial days, when they came in, they distincted the religion a bit more, so they drew lines to say, okay, this is more Hinduism, this is more Sikhism, which is more Islam. But if you delve into the more mysticism or spirituality or philosophy behind it, or the reality of the situation, these things set a social condition on the outside. So they may look different, but as one Shabad or sound current goes, or poetry goes, of someone called Guru Nanak, who was the founder of the Sikh religion, he says some people say Ram Ram, some people say, Allah, some people say Khuda, but at the end of the day, they're different wells, but the undercurrent, the ocean is the same, right? The ocean of reality, the ocean of symbolism, the ocean of thought forms and emotion is all one human nature, and there's all one reality. And also, if you've looked into Ayurveda, you'll also notice that the patterns and the shapes of the thought forms is not just human nature, but it's the same as nature itself. So we looked at the golden ratio before, and now we'll caveat by saying a lot of people take it too far. So I looked a bit into more of the research of the golden ratio, and some people are applying it to just random things, and they're saying that there's a golden ratio here and there's a golden ratio here. So it's very important to stay logical with this stuff as well, and while not seeking too much permission from facts and science and trusting our own intuition, to also rationally check up that the science is legit, if that makes sense to you, Like Bruce Lee said, not being too mechanical, you'll be like a mechanical man, but not being too rational, or you'll be, unscientific, but keeping that balance. So things like the Parthenon, right? Did that really use the golden ratio? A lot of sources online say no. When I went to the Parthenon and I was listening to the audio tour, they said yes, but at the end of the day it was mimicking nature, etc. But the reason I'm talking about the golden ratio is that in Ayurveda is that the patterns in nature, so the way the galaxies are constructed, the way the weather patterns are, the way our skin and our cells regenerate, the way the leaves regenerate, all these patterns in nature. Remember we talked about the ancient philosophies of India. Rajas energy, the doing energy, the tamas energy, the more inertia energy, and then the sattva energy, that light energy, that more being energy. So these, we're saying that the human being, the thoughts, the emotions, everything to do with the human being, they are an organism that is part of nature. And so the thought forms underneath the surface of religions, which is basically a collective psychological group of human beings, or any company brands or any individual human beings, are still going to operate by the fundamental natural laws, right? So again, like the Greeks said, like if you align with nature, no one can really stand in your way, because you're aligning with these natural thoughts and natural emotions. I hope that makes sense to you. What I'm basically saying is that the microcosm is a replication of the macrocosm. They're both governed by similar natural laws. I know it's a bit abstract and kind of out there, but I want to make you understand this sort of mysticism or spirituality or religious mindset. So going back to the surface, so we had 3 different peoples, their stories seem different, and their lives seem different, or we have 3 different religions, and the social conditions are different, so how they speak, what they wear, all these outer conditions, there may be belief systems, but underneath the conscious and the subconscious, these individuals ended up being produced by certain circumstances. So even if a religion dies out, the truth that they express is still the same, right? I'm not talking about the belief systems. That's why it's hard to navigate religions, because there's a lot of belief systems in the way. But at the core wisdom behind them, same with ancient Chinese and Greek, is that they are formed in a certain time, in a certain cultural situation, and so they have a culture wrapped around them, right? They have certain belief systems in order to express themselves. You always need structure to express creativity, right? Or if you want to get more spiritual, you've got to have, to represent something that's unmanifested, you've got to have a manifested thing, right? To have life flow through a leaf, you've got to have a structure of the leaf in order for the energy to flow and create new cells. So you're always going to have a structure there. And so it just so happens that these structures were different. But underneath the subconscious, they could be, let's take the people that we interviewed in Illuminating Dialogues, you might be resonating with some of them because they're pointing to certain things. There might be a fear, for example, of money, or a fear of getting conditioned, or a fear of expressing yourself, etc. You know? And so they might resonate certain universal collective thoughts with you. So when you're listening to Davina, or you're listening to Lav, or you're listening to Sunny, you might be inspired by their stories because they've overcome. It might seem that they're separate, but they've overcome very similar collective and very natural patterns that are underneath. And some people get stuck in these patterns and loops, you know. And then if we have enough energy, we can break out and establish new. And when we get settled and when we stay stagnant, we can stay too long in a system, and you know that becomes very stagnant. But it takes some energy to come out of a system and create a new balance or harmony, right? And over time, systems harmonize. That's just the nature of things until they become unstable and disharmonize and try to create new systems. And talking about this stuff is so abstract because we cannot see it. So the way we communicate our belief systems to one another, we can feel it. I'm representing it here, the feelings, the emotions, the beliefs. You can't feel it, but you know, going through Myers-Briggs, because I'm an ENFJ, I can see NI, introverted intuition. INFJs can see that clearer. The belief, so people may be talking here, but what's going on in the subconscious? There's different patterns of belief systems, right, in religions or in individuals, and we want to understand these belief systems that go on. So I'm talking to you right now. How are you receiving this? What's going on at the subconscious level? Okay, so now that we've got that underway, now that we've got that out the way, we can start to understand where symbolism comes in. Because symbolism is not the language here where, you know, someone's, I'm just going to undo my pen, where someone's talking to someone here, and this guy's talking to someone here, and this guy's talking to someone here. You know, that's not symbolism, that's just communication of ideas and being relatable. But we're talking about inserting symbols here, inserting certain symbols here, maybe inserting a symbol here, right? These are just random symbols, right? But what happens is when we insert symbolism into the language of the subconscious, we bypass the logical mind and we insert our symbolisms into the collective subconscious. And we can start to influence this. And that's how we can see how politics is so powerful, how religions are so powerful, because they understand the language of the subconscious. And so in our life, how can we stop thinking too much, but how can we go into the emotion and start to invoke certain primordial symbolisms inside of us? And remember, all symbolisms are neutral, but they can be used for different purposes. And how do we want to see them? And so when we insert symbolisms here, so for example, if I see Mercedes-Benz, right? What feeling does that create? Is it class? You know? Is it, oh, this guy's rich? It's like a root, it's like a seed. You insert the seed of symbolism, it doesn't say anything. It's just a visual image or a sound or, you know, a symbolic element. But then it plants that seed, and naturally on its own, it creates new thoughts and emotions. It creates new thoughts and emotions that go upwards, you know? And so it's like a very quick, direct access into that subconscious on a collective level. So you can influence people on a collective level. So it's very important to understand this for yourself. And so that's why it's very quick, because it generates thoughts and emotions by itself. So that seems really abstract, but it was important to that groundwork to what we're trying to understand next about how do we use the power of the symbolism. How do brands like McDonald's, like Oreos, like Netflix, like Lamborghini, like KFC, Wikipedia, Apple, Starbucks, how do they all use symbolisms, right? And then how do the primordial symbols are used in religions. And we're going to take an example from Sikhism about power, and also ancient Sanskrit as well. So, before I do that, I just want to talk about how being in our own story can limit our reality. Because last Wisdom Exchange 25, I was talking about my own story. And so while it was good for me to share, I was getting very emotional, very passionate because I was in my own story. And so I always look back at these live streams with a coaching lens, because for me it's very useful as a coach, as a training coach, to understand how people are acting, their belief systems, but also me, and I can view myself from how I'm doing and how I'm communicating. This also helps me get better in talking and live streaming. But I noticed how I was also wrapped up in my own story about university and school, for example. And so I might be saying that I might be sitting alone watching Netflix at university. I didn't have much friends. But that story, stories are good and they're powerful. For example, we're going to the moon and then we go to the moon, right? John F. Kennedy said that in the 1960s. But they also can blind us. So, for example, me talking about this, I also had a great time at university. I did a lot of group interactions in my university environment. I learned a lot. I refined my technical abilities. I helped people increase their presentation skills. I did badminton. I did a whole host of things at university as well. So having that narrative in my own life, it might be very powerful in saying that I don't want to do something that doesn't align with me again. It's good for that narrative, but we have to be very careful not to get wrapped up in that narrative, and so I can become very then religious about my own life and about my own story, and that I'm limiting the reality of my situation. Because if I say that my university was so bad, or I didn't pick the right subject, I wasn't grateful for the timeline that I was on, and I can't view my whole reality from the positive and negative perspective, cannot take a neutral stance and a bird's eye view, then I'm getting very religious and wrapped up. When I say religious, I mean dogmatic. I'm not trying to be, not trying to diss religion. I'm just saying very dogmatic about the beliefs, very tied to a belief system. So looking back on it and looking back on that reflection, sometimes when emotion is tied to something, we can get very wrapped up. And it can be very powerful and drive us, but if we're careful, we cannot separate from that. And so just before we delve into something, I want to talk about aspect, before we dive into religions especially, because it can be a minefield and it can be hard to navigate. But using intuition and logic together, understanding with this that the religion is a glove. So, often what happens is if I've got a glove of, religion A, and then if I got a glove of religion B, you know, the whole point of religion and the spirituality is to put that glove on so we can enact in a world, right, with these values and with these and to empower us. But what can happen is we can slip on that glove and then we can't even feel the other from the religion. We stop seeing from the other religion. We stop seeing the other as a human being, and we can't see the hand inside the other glove. We can only see the glove, right? So we've got this glove on and we can't seem to take it off. And the whole point on religion is to actually realize that you're not the glove, you're the hand underneath, and everyone else is the hand underneath. And that glove is there to provide that structure and that system. And so when we're got that glove on for too long and we start identifying with that glove and we cannot remove it, then we are kind of stuck. So we have to be able to take our hand outside that glove, realize what that glove really is, and realizing how we're using that. And that the real religion is that the hand, the sovereignty of the hand that chooses to go into the glove. So I hope that analogy seems clear, because it can be very intimidating when you come across a religious person with values. So to really understand that glove analogy is important. So let us go on to this. Share my screen of presentation. Yes. So we're going to start with brands. Politics, brands, and religions, like I said, by bypassing the logical brain into the subconscious. Like Nike, Apple, Mercedes, they represent power, status, class, and that invokes the seed of the deeper primordial emotions and thoughts and expresses branches, right? So INDB, IKEA, you know, Caterpillar, positivity, creativity, warmth, National Geographic. They're invoking that energy. So even when you just see that logo or hear about it or listen to the theme tune, what they're trying to create a mood. They're trying to create da 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 da. I'm loving it, right? That feeling. It's so much deeper than just what you can express. It goes deeper into your subconscious. Vitality, excitement, fun. Fanta, Harley Davidson, Mozilla Firefox, You can see all these things being created. Power, passion, energy, YouTube, Virgin, like Nintendo, Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, KFC. See how they can invoke that redness like an apple. We've evolved to see that ripe raw apple. Royalty, spirituality, Cadbury's, spiritual chocolate. Trust, HP, Volkswagen, the wagon of the people, right? The car of the people. Peace, growth, health, Animal Planet, Android, Spotify, Starbucks, not sure how much healthy that is. Calm, balance, cold, WWF, Mercedes, class, prestige, Apple. So you can see how these things, when you wear these logos and companies and brands use this, how can they invoke stuff on you? So that's good, just to understand on that. Now that second level, oops, sorry, my microphone fell out. I just want to check if you can still hear me. Da, 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 da. Me? Yes. Okay, good. Sorry, this fell out. But that's good to understand the icons and and brands on that sort of level and how they can actually change the whole consciousness of the modern day, right? For people like Netflix or Cadbury's or Mercedes Benz, how they can actually affect the consumers. But I want to go to a deeper level. I want to make this practical, how you can use this, because with all due respect, but the company and brands don't often, like, you don't put KFC on to empower yourself. You don't put Mercedes Benz on to empower yourself. You're buying that car to show prestige. But I want to show you how you can use symbolism in your life, and you can use the sounds and symbolic elements to enact power in your life. So for that, we have to delve into religion, because religion tries to give the power to the people from the past. So let's take an example from Sikhism. Consciously using symbolisms, not just unconsciously letting that be used by you, you getting swept away subconsciously, but actually consciously using this subconscious mechanism to empower yourself. So in the Sikh religion, Sikh means learner, again, just a outer condition pointing to that primordial source and that primordial nature, is the sword of Guru Har Gobind, the sixth Guru. And we talked a lot about this before, especially in the live stream with Davina, and before is the meaty, beady aspect. I'm going to keep repeating this because it's a really nice philosophy. It comes up everywhere. It's a universal philosophy. Meaty, there's two flags. Beady always stands higher than meaty. Meaty is one sword or one flag that represents everything that is transient in nature, the material domain, the structure aspect of life. Miri means king, it means kind of prince, it comes from Amir in Persian. Piri comes from Pir, like the Arabic, wise old man, the wisdom aspects, things that is timeless, the intangible qualities, the qualities of wisdom, and it's that intangible things that we talked about at that start, the primordial nature that needs the structure to flow in through, and that always stands higher, and that should guide the meaty aspects. So these are represented by two swords, and Guru Hargobind infused this into the Sikh Panth or the Sikh religion. And so, why does this relate to you and me? Because we can see here that on the sword there was engraved from the Sanskrit or Vedic or Hindu tradition, however you want to call it, ancient Indian tradition, this Mata Chandi or um, Kalima, and this was actually on a. So you can see in the colonial aspects, they've separated very distinctly, into segregated um, ways, of being after the British um, Raj. But we can see here that this was a very well known symbol, not just by one sect or whatever, but it was a symbol that was well known, just like a corporate brand is known nowadays. But this is more intimate because this represents a dark feminine aspect. When I say, I don't mean the gender, but I mean the energy. And so it's that energy of Kalima, drinking the bowl from the soup, cutting the enemy's head clean off, the more raw, bloodthirsty aspects, conquering aspects, eliminating the vices from their roots. And so this embodies that primal quality. And we also see something engraved in Persian, in Arabic or Persian, that says Guru Hargobind. So this embodies, because often we are thinking boxes, the Christian religion, the Sikh, we think in boxes, but in the reality of it as human beings, there's one there's one reality, and to draw these multiple essences from. And so this was engraved on his sword because all the symbology is from one source. It draws upon one quality, one human emotion, one, a palette of human emotions that can be accessed by all, not just one religion. A plethora of human thoughts that can be that can be drawn upon by all, not just one certain human religion. And so these symbologies point to a deeper aspect of reality that can be channeled. I hope that makes sense. It points to a deeper aspect of reality that can be channeled. You have to see beyond this picture. What energy does it invoke? When you're listening to music or poetry about this or dance about this, what energy does it invoke? And I'll show you how it's not just related to Indian tradition, because the Greek goddess, Hedica, I think she's called, also in Celtic, there's also another lady, I think she's called Caligan or something, but she's also the Kali Ma version. She's the goddess of the underworld and represents that. Again, there is sort of this divine light energy and then divine darkness energy to go to the roots, right? And to cut from the roots. So why would they put that on a sword? Because you're not going into battle for self-actualization and to, be at the pinnacle of your civilization. You're going there to defend the very roots of your civilization, to eliminate any vices, especially if it's a righteous battle, because you're doing it as a last port of call, because people have come to your door that are kind of bloodthirsty and wanting to destroy your women and children civilization. You have to protect it. So you're invoking this kind of
symbology or this kind of nature. So they engraved this sort of emotion or this subconscious behavior. And so when you invoke this Kalima energy, or you invoke this Hedika energy, or this dark aspect energy, you're doing it because maybe your civilization is is going to be attacked by something that's unconscious, or maybe you're trying to make a career change and you want to really attack at any, you're making this big career move or maybe a relationship change, and there's a lot of attachments there, and at your root, at your core of your root, there's a lot of fear, and so you're needing to have a certain you need to tap into this primordial energy that conquers fear, that slices through fear, that drives a stake through fear at its very core. And so when you introduce poetry, symbolism, music, any art to do with that, you're starting to um, go into the very strike at the very subconscious collective aspect. So that's how you can implement a sea change, because that this certain embodiment, this certain symbolism, strikes at the very root of fear, and so that's why this quality can represent a sea change. So I don't want this to be purely intellectual, at surface level, and mind dominated and analytical. I want this to go deeper, deeper into the wells, and it leads to that same source of knowledge, and it invokes that primordial human prakriti, as they call it in Indian, the prakriti, or the energy, or the biras, the flavor, the essence within you. What does it look like to conquer your fears? What would, if you had the perfect life, what would you have to do next week to do that, right? In just 7 days. There's a lot of fear there, right? Would you have to quit your job? Would you have to reach out to people? Would you have to, you know, um, do a certain hobby? A lot of fears come up, right? And then how do you conquer that fear? That's where it doesn't become intellectual. That's where it comes from information to transformation, because then you have to embody that quality. You have to call upon and invoke that energy, that primordial energy. And that primordial energy is represented through symbolism. So I don't want to make this intellectual. I want to make this very tangible for you, because it can be a very intellectual thing, when you're looking at it from this aspect. So, Kali symbolism and Sarbalo poetry. We covered Sarbalo Granth, which was the third Sikh Granth that we talked about. Sarb meaning all, Lo meaning steel, all steel, like this kara that Sikh people wear. And it's really that steel quality, it's that steel essence of the sword, of the mind, of the soul. When I say soul, I mean the flavor and the essence that you're carrying with you, that you're enacting. Of course, there are many qualities. There's qualities of love, of devotion, of humor, of wisdom. But we're just giving an example of the symbology of the destroyer of fear, for example, because it's a very powerful one. Okay, I'm just going to sneeze for 1 second.
Oh.
Excuse me, these things happen on a live stream. There you go, I'm human. So, yes, the poetry. So we looked earlier in earlier live streams, and how we looked into the musical lens and the rags, sarigama padanisa, just like so, do re mi fa sol la ti do. When they're played and they're sung, especially with stringed instruments, they elicit certain emotions that drown the mind into that emotion. So your mind is often busy because things are happening here, and they bubble up to the surface, and that's causing certain thoughts, right? And so what the rags do is they sort of tickle the mind, they excite it, and they drown it into a certain emotion. And so you're drowned in that emotion, and you're feeling that flavor, you're feeling that essence, you're feeling that ras, as they say. And so we talked about that in earlier live streams. But the music, when you listen to the music, it makes this kind of symbology very realistic, because you're listening to it, you're immersed in it, and you can feel the power. And so that's why we're going to take an example from Sikhism again. That's why the Sarbalo and Dasim Granths, so they're two granths or two compilations of musical poetry in this sort of warrior style, um, in terms of being sword like or being all iron, because you're not just imagining it, but you're embodying that quality. You're meditating on the quality, you're contemplating on it. And when you're doing that, it produces the commitment of action, and then you act it consciously. So you're contemplating that action, you're contemplating how you're going to do that in your life, you're visualizing how you do that in your life, and you're embodying that quality, and then you act on it consciously. And that kind of symbolism, that kind of depth of symbolism, creates a sea change in human consciousness from a root, from yes, from one person. But when mass people are singing these kind of songs and listening to these kind of poetries, there's a sea change. And so their clothes are going to start to represent that, the way they talk, the way they act, the way they do things. That is going to create a sea change. And an example of this is maybe in Sparta, for example, or in ancient Greece, or even like the Khalsa, which is a Sikh, um, the Sikh group that was created from this power of symbolism. So so when we looked at the brands and stuff, they don't tell you that, because this is kind of at the surface level, and they kind of got a religious quality to them, because they do influence. When you're gonna get, what car are you gonna get? Oh, Hyundai is quite good, or Audi's too good. Yeah, quite good. I'm just saying that for example because I'm gonna get a new car soon. But these are the brands, because you have confidence in them. Or Apple versus Android, right? Because sometimes we are a bit with the brands rather than going with the actual understanding. So I just want to finish on that, on this quote, that symbolism is a language of mysteries. By symbols, men and women have ever sought to communicate to each other those thoughts which transcend the limitations of language. Right? And hopefully now it's not a mystery, because we just unpacked, going from the start, the different religions, the well underneath, the different people we talked to, my story, but also how symbolisms are inserted here, and how we don't need thoughts to understand them symbolisms. We can use our emotions to feel them. We can contemplate them on a deeper introspective level. And now we can start to unpack and unravel intuitively the wisdom and the brilliance of religions, the brilliance of companies, the brilliance of brands. And so I hope I went further, so for you to enact this prakriti, or primordial energy, within you, and how you can use symbolism, how you can use music in your daily life consciously, and also notice when you're being used by symbolism unconsciously. So that has been our whirlwind tour by the power of symbolism. 40 minutes, wow. If you listen to it to the end, kudos to you. If you want to understand your prakriti, your nature, your energy, your divine personality, or just the way you're naturally wired, and if you feel you're in life, you're a bit in a box, or you're resisting your situation and you want to flow a bit better in life, I've made a personality package. There's 5 free personality tests to give you insight below, in the description below. Feel free to complete that. It'll give you a lot of in-depth understanding about yourself, your own wiring, your own cognitive wiring in your brain. And then if you want a free session, you can contact me on my calendar and we can discuss not just theoretically but also practically how does that show up in your life and how can you make your life more in line with your own nature and more fruitful for yourself. So I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Wisdom Exchange 26, the power of symbology. I will see you in the next Wisdom Exchange. But until then, take care, everybody, and I wish you a good day ahead. Bye bye.